Welcome to the Chase and Embrace Show, where we interview women who are chasing God and embracing His purpose for her life, with the hopes to encourage you to do the thing that God is calling you to do. Hey everyone, thank you for attending our show today. My name is Sharon, and I am the host of Chase and Embrace, where we share women's stories who are chasing God and embracing His purpose for her life, with the hopes to encourage you to chase and embrace God and do the thing that God wants you to do. Today with me, I have Rebecca Nolting with Ask Publishing. She is a two-time author, and she has a God story to share with us today. And, one of the things that you had mentioned to me previously in a conversation is that Psalm 91 is super important to you. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of verse 1 and 2 of Psalm 91. And it's those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare about the Lord. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust Him. That's a very powerful verse, and it's a verse of protection. So tell me, why is that verse so important to you?
Well, I'm so thankful to be joining you today. I love the name of your podcast. It's so exciting to be able to share my story. And chasing God is always a very important thing. And so I just want to say that first.
Yeah, and this whole podcast is me chasing God and doing my purpose. So,
and you're embracing it.
Yes, and I am embracing it.
So I just want to say that first. But
yeah, no problem.
Really, Psalm 91 is very important to me. The entire Psalm, actually, it's a lot longer. The whole scripture is about seeking God and finding peace in Him. And for me, I was told that actually a few years ago by my pastor. He knew I was struggling with some mental health struggles, and he had suggested to look that up. And when I have had to remember to do it, I kind of joke that, you do have to remember to do it, find it, and read it. Embracing those. But when I have read it, when I've been having a rough day, whatever's going on in my mind, I've been able to just let that seep in and just feel that protection of it. Talks a lot about protecting you from evil. You can definitely use those negative thoughts and they can take you down a dark road. So for me, finding that scripture, and then the one I have found is a wonderful one that includes a prayer. So I'm not always the best at finding the best prayer or, feeling like I can what I want to say. And that one just includes it all for me. And I feel a greater peace after I read it. And I tried to share that with multiple people, and just even last week with a friend, and she was just like, thank you, I've read it over and over. Like it needed to read it as well. So I just love to be able to share that.
Yeah, it's a very powerful chapter in Psalms. And so you talk about like the mental health and that thoughts going down the dark road. Tell me a little bit about some of the dark roads where this verse has helped you.
Oh, we're just going to go straight into the dark road? No.
Well, the great thing about the dark road is Psalm 91 gives you the light.
There you go. I don't know if I've ever described it as a dark road, but I'm going to go with it.
Hey, so, you said it. I was just using your words.
I'm like, I got to write that down. I'm going to use it now.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, sure.
Good descriptor. Hey, we prayed that God would give you the words.
That's right. Yeah, we'll take it. So I know we're like having a lot of fun joking around, but really there were some very just serious times where laughter was very difficult. I was struggling with a lot of anxiety and depression, actually experienced burnout. The depression caused the burnout. Did the burnout cause the depression? I say both. I was having panic attacks. I was having just like not sleeping as well. And so reading that just helped, as I said, calm my mind. It's a good distraction. It's a good just, I know, people say, oh yeah, when you're struggling, go to scripture. And that is so, um, it's like, it's good in theory,
Mm-hmm.
but it's hard to actually practice when you're really in that spiral. And,
Right.
so I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to be better about that and distracting my mind, but it's definitely been a process of learning how to do that. You can't just, like I said, people just saying like, well, just don't have those negative thoughts. Well, thank you. That's easier said than done.
Yes, for sure.
I
I
mean, I had people,
understand.
yeah, people saying like, oh, you're not smiling as much. Well, yeah, because I'm struggling.
Yes.
There's, people could tell that like something wasn't right, but they like didn't know what was wrong. And so it is hard when you're struggling to find the words to share how someone else can help you, or what would be comforting, or just even literally like what's wrong.
Right.
Like I had one particular friend one Sunday, I said I was struggling with anxiety, and she's like, well, what's going on? And I said, I can't tell you. And she's like, it's okay. You don't have to tell me. And I was like, no, actually, I don't know how to describe it. Like it wasn't that
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell her. I just couldn't find the words for it at that time. And so
Right.
I love using those examples because it's so human of like, like
Mm-hmm.
there was an attempt at connection, but I just couldn't even get the words out.
So let me ask you a question. You struggle with anxiety. You believe in Jesus. Do you ever get those judgmental thoughts from Christians that say you just don't have enough faith?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
And what do
for
you
sure.
say to those people? Because I'm sure that that is something that's out there and people are scared to talk. Hey, I believe in
Yeah,
Jesus. I have anxiety and they're scared to talk about it, which is why this is so perfect that you're on the show because you could reach these people who are Christians and believe in Jesus. And they're like, I must not have a lot of faith in
right.
Jesus, but that's not true.
No, it's definitely not true. And it's finding people that you can feel safe sharing your thoughts with. That's a big one. But I would just say, I mean, part of it is we're called not to judge, but it's
Right.
hard to explain to someone if they've not dealt with it. And
Right.
so there is that struggle because, you want to have people understand. I felt like I was just like, people don't understand what I'm going through. I mean, I did have a comment of like, what do I have to be depressed about? That got back to me. And I'm like, yes, I know I'm blessed. I know, like, I, I've been active in church. I've been doing all these things, but it also doesn't mean that you can't, you can always stop those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I kept hearing like, "Hey, take every thought captive." Well, that is so great in theory, but I just, I can't say that I can always do it,
Mm-hmm.
And so for me,
Yep.
um, unfortunately, it was finding other people, not necessarily in other believers at the time,
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, but I found people who had been through, that were dealing with depression and anxiety to connect with, to go, okay, I'm not the only one that's going through this. Like
Mm-hmm.
I said, you're hearing the same things. Like I said, what do you have to be depressed about? I had messaged a person I actually met on Facebook because we just kind of connected and started chatting privately. And I had messaged her that, and she goes, I hate it when people say that. And I went, like, I didn't know that was something that happens a lot. You don't like know until you share what's going on in your own life to understand that you're not the only one that's felt something, or that has, had something, a comment like that made to you. I kind of just felt like I was maybe part of the club then. Like, I didn't know
Not
that
a
was the
good
club I
club.
wanted to be part. It's a different type of
At
club.
least, yeah, but at least you found someone you could identify with, and that's always helpful
Right. And then
because
that person,
then,
right.
yeah, because then what happens is they share with you what they did to get out of it or to help themselves or had other people. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. It's like you're sharing your story. You're a Christian. You had anxiety. I have anxiety. And I'm not very good either at reading scripture, but what I do is I turn on music super loud and I scream it really loud. And I just try to hide the negative thoughts. And then I usually feel better after. So I understand those anxiety. You have anxiety. Life is full of
There is worry.
uncertain things.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you don't trust God. It just means in that moment, I mean, we do have an enemy who loves to whisper things in our mind, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So tell me, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
I was going to say, so tell me this dark road that you went down to, how, where did it lead and how did you start climbing out?
Okay. Since you're using my analogy of the dark road, I love it.
Exactly. I loved it.
I'm like, I gotta find humor in some of this stuff because if you don't find humor, I mean, some of the things that I said, I've heard said is just like, I can't make that stuff up. It's just
yeah.
like,
And I'm really sorry you had to go through that from our sisters and brothers, you know?
well, just in professionals and, just it's been an interesting experience. So like I said, I went through burnout. It was actually at my church. So that put another dynamic of like, I'm struggling, please, help me understand what I'm going through. And I couldn't explain it. So when I decided to step away, that's when my suicidal thoughts really increased. I had had them before, like at some point, a couple times in my life, but it was actual planning in my mind, which is not good.
Wow.
No actual attempts, but I feel like I was close enough. I mean, you can't, it's,
I'm sorry you went such a dark place.
yeah. But what I learned, and it was so fascinating to me, was that particular day, I literally just like laid in bed for hours. And I, had tried like I went actually back to my church and went and tried to just like journal and pray and, do what I could do. And so after laying in bed for a few hours, it finally just kind of passed on. I just kind of felt it lifting out.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, I realized I needed to call my therapist. So I called her the next morning and set up a session. And what was so interesting is even though she wasn't officially a Christian counselor, she was just like, you sought God. Like you were seeking God, even though you may not feel like you were in that time, but you were. And I really do believe that God just decided, okay, I'm going to show her mercy for whatever reason he decided to let me continue. So that was really interesting that she pointed that out to me, so soon after that, like, you were seeking, you did try, like, because you don't feel like you're like connected with God at all. You feel like you're as far away from God as possible, but trying to seek, trying to do what you can to literally just keep breathing is God's protection. And
yeah.
The second
I
time,
love that he protected you.
I truly believe like he kept me laying in bed. I have this vision. I had a dream that I woke up. I don't know exactly when later I had this dream, but I had a dream that someone was like laying on top of me. And I woke up going, I felt like that was a way that God was showing me like, that's what I did. Like,
yeah, for
held you
sure.
down.
Yeah, so you couldn't get up. Yeah.
So I couldn't and go do what I was thinking I wanted to do. So it's so wild. It's something
that's
I've
amazing.
Not shared that dream, but with anyone before. So
good.
You're special. You asked about the dark road. So
that I do believe in that power of God, though. So
yeah.
I believe that that's what happened, and he was showing you. That's amazing.
So a few months later, I made a decision to take a break from our church completely because I was still struggling because I went back to where I burned out. That's kind of weird. When you burn out at a job, you don't go back to that place of employment the next week.
Right.
So this was
True.
different. So I decided to take a break from our church, which that just was like the separation I just didn't want to imagine,
Mm-hmm.
how I knew things were going to be different. I made the decision to step away, not knowing if we were going to go back to that church or not. I just said, I need a
Okay.
break. And then I spiraled for a few days and just like trying to push through, keeping my mind busy as possible. And then the one night I kept trying to pray during the night, but it would keep off the bad thoughts. But when I would just let it go, it went not good, is what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
the next morning I got up. I actually went to work for a little bit because I needed to take care of some things. And then I called my husband and said, I'm going to the hospital. I need more help. That is one of the scariest things I can say. Probably the scariest thing I've ever done is
Mm-hmm.
you have to admit you need help. And then they
Right.
ask you a bazillion times, like, well, what were you thinking? Tell me what's going on. And you don't want to share that because of that guilt and shame. And it's quite intense. I was in a facility for a few days where that was a whole other surreal experience. I can't even fully describe. Well, kind of felt like prison in a lot of ways, but we were allowed to walk around, but we couldn't go far. We had
Mm-hmm.
our room and our hallway and a little like TV room, and you went together to go eat. And it was very structured in that sense, but not structured. So as I had said, that some of the comments that were made while I was there, one of the psychiatrists actually told me that he's like, well, you just need to work through your emotional distress on your own. Thank you. Thank you. I hadn't thought of doing that.
I've only been doing that for how long?
I mean, I already have been in therapy and I saw help, but thank you. I really appreciate it. I never thought to do that. Um,
Wow.
so
Wow.
it was just shocking, some of the things that you're just like, oh, thank you. I hadn't,
Yeah.
like you said, just pray more, just have more faith. Like, yeah, that never
Was this
crossed
a
my mind.
Christian facility that you went to? No.
No,
Okay. I was just
no.
curious.
That would have been interesting. No.
Yeah.
Um, well, how I got out, that was, I mean, my pastor, the few days before when I told him we were stepping away, he had said, sometimes you just have to like burn it all down and start over. Like sometimes you just need to do a reset. And that's kind of how a lot of the way I looked at going there was just to clear my mind, reset. I mean, it doesn't mean that everything was fixed when I got home, because then, you have to get back to real life. You can't just like that didn't happen.
Right.
Um there's a little more complex than that, but
Right.
so that was kind of, I mean, definitely, I hope, my lowest point that I'll ever have.
I pray that
But
too.
I think a lot of it was, then it's not just having those anxious thoughts or the depression, the just dark thoughts, all that stuff. It comes with, for me, like, and I'm sure as other Christians, it comes with, like I said, guilt. Then you're like, I can't believe I thought those things. And then you just feel shame. Like you don't even want to like confess it. You don't,
Right.
even though God knows.
But that's
You're
the thing
like,
is like it's a vicious circle. You have these bad thoughts and then you're
mhm,
trying to get well. And then there's the shame and the guilt. And honestly, all of that is just our enemy,
mhm,
messing with our minds because shame and guilt is not of God.
right. But
And
it's
so
easy
it's
to,
just a vicious circle that he gets you in. So what got you out of that circle?
well, about 2 or 3 weeks after the facility, after we got out,
Mm-hmm.
I had actually connected with some of the people in the facility that were going through the same thing that I was at that time. Like I was saying, finding those people and just knowing that we were all like, gosh, I mean, some of them, at least one or two of the people that I connected with had attempted and they were dealing with the fact that like they were not successful,
Right.
which is
A
like
whole nother thing.
that's a whole other thing. But a few weeks after I had seen my phone, one of the people had texted asking for the suicide hotline. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not good that, he's struggling, still struggling.
Hmm.
And so I texted back the number and then I was feeling guilty, like maybe I should have called him, but I wasn't in any state to counsel him or
Right.
help him through it. So I had to look at that, but I realized I could pray. And so that is the only time really that I prayed that intensely throughout the night. And I just kept saying, like, please protect, all the people that I've met, and thank you for your protection. And I just felt like I was in that, like, kind of cycle of doing that. And I finally felt like God forgave me. And I felt actually truly thankful for him protecting me,
Hmm.
that I finally felt like, okay, like this is, God has forgiven me. And there's a whole other layer of forgiving yourself.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. So
For sure.
that's that's still a work in progress, I'll be honest, because sometimes you can cycle back and, go,
Hmm.
mm, eh,
Yeah, I've done a lot of things that I cycle back on and I have to re-ask for forgiveness, but he's already forgiven me. It's me forgiving myself. So I totally get that.
right. Yeah. So really that was what I feel like a huge step,
Hmm.
was to feel forgiven, feel thankful for being alive. That was really just intense. I, got up going, oh my gosh, is he okay? I was so worried,
Hmm.
and we didn't hear from him for like a few hours. So it was like,
Wow.
okay, but he's okay.
Good. Good, good, good.
But
Glad to
it's
hear it.
still, but it was knowing that, as I said, that I've never prayed that like intercessory type intensity before, and it's quite powerful. I'm not usually that, type of person. I know there's people who are intercessories. I'm just not. That's not my gift. Uh,
I don't know about that. You
it's in a
may
different
just
way,
not
maybe.
accepted it yet.
Yeah, so it was a lot of that, but it was also continuing therapy. I did some very
Hmm.
intense therapy sessions, where I worked through some very deep insecurities and fears. And that was an intense process. There's a lot of things where I keep saying, trust the process. And I'm like, oh man, but going through it,
Hmm.
like, it's not easy. It's not easy
No,
to face those things.
because there's so many layers
Mhm.
that you have
And
to
it was
peel back.
right. Because this particular therapy, you actually think about the most distressing things that you've gone through and you reprocess it. And so you're feeling those intense, just sadness, anger, any emotion, but usually it's negative. And you're processing it properly. And it's
Right.
it's so wild. That's a whole other surreal thing
Right.
to
Yeah, I
to
couldn't even imagine.
explain, but it does work. Like, and it's, for me, a lot of what I feel like my story has been about is telling people they're not alone, telling people that it's okay to seek help. I mean,
Hmm.
go to therapy. There's nothing wrong with it, to not feel like you're not good enough to, you can't do it on your own. Well, that's
Hmm.
kind of the point, is because God's with you. But also, yeah.
So the loneliness that you're talking about that you tell people, is that something that you was one of your core fears was loneliness?
Yes. Yes, for sure.
It's
It goes
funny
all
because
together. It all
go
goes
ahead.
together, and like all my core words that I had processed all are connected. And I remember telling my therapist, I'm like, everyone's felt rejected. Everyone's felt, alone. And she's like, yes, but not everybody's taken it to the extreme of having suicidal thoughts. Oh, thank you.
Funny, but
Thank
not
you.
funny, right? And
Thank
that's
you.
true.
It's true
Yeah,
though.
it's true. Satan is very good at making us feel isolated. I know that when I had my divorce, one of the things that I struggled with and Satan was very good at and tried very, very hard to get to me is that no one's ever going to love me. And I have an amazing husband now that loves me to the core. But it's just
But you
amazing.
didn't know that then.
No, I didn't. And the thing is we are not meant to be alone, because we have a heavenly father. We're made to be connected to him. But, sin came into the world, so we're kind of separated, but yeah, you can get forgiveness and all of that. But I think that that's why loneliness is so hard for us because we're not made to be alone. God didn't make us to be alone. And
That's very
yeah, I
true.
understand. I can identify with the loneliness thing. So how do you manage when you feel like those moments of loneliness? Do you read the Psalm 91 or what do you do?
Some, as I said, when I remember,
Right.
details. Like you said, honestly, like you said, blasting Christian music, finding some of my songs that I find my favorites, and then, they're just like, I send it to a friend, they're like, that sounds like you. I'm like, I know. Um, they're like, that sounds like your life. Who wrote your song? I'm like, I know. They're like, in
Yeah.
my head. Gosh,
Yeah,
darn.
there's a favorite song that I'm Truth. Is it Truth?
The truth.
The
There's one that
Truth.
just, it's, yeah.
And it's by
There's a new
sung by
one.
a girl.
There's a
I
recent
think
one, and I just heard it
can't remember it.
recently.
Dang it, it's fun. I love it. I blast
Oh,
that
it's
thing.
because it's really blocking out the lies and
Exactly.
blocking out.
I think
Yes,
we're
no,
talking about the same song.
no.
Gosh,
That's
dang
one of
it.
my new favorites. It is. I'm
It is
like,
mine too. I'm like play it over and over when I'm driving down the street as loud as on my radio. On my speakers as loud as could be. I will post the name of this song in the comments of this video
please do.
because I'm
It's
not
so good.
remembering it right now, what her name is and what it's
I
called,
know. I
but it's
can't think of it.
powerful. I send it to
Oh no,
everybody that's struggling with who they
yes,
are in their identity right now.
exactly. No, it's so good.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I
it
do
is.
that. So I'll text friends. I have a few friends that know that I can just I know I can reach out to and just be like, I need a word of encouragement. Basically, they know what I'm saying. I don't ask that exactly, but
Mm-hmm.
a couple weeks ago, I was dealing with something and I sent, I think, about 15 different people a text just saying, please pray for me. And I gave
Mm-hmm.
them just a little, like it's about this, a general
Mm-hmm.
thing. So it wasn't just like they were like, I have no idea what you're talking about, you know?
Yeah.
And I felt that connected. I felt like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they don't necessarily need to know the whole story,
No, they
but
don't. God knows.
God knows. And I know that that is my way for me of combating loneliness is connected. And it actually, at my work, we did a strengths test. So we had to answer
Mm-hmm.
all these questions and they were totally
Right.
like, some of them were like so weird. I was like, I don't know, but you have to answer them like super fast.
Right.
And connected was one of my top 5. And I was like, yep, that's exactly, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's my word. Like, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
my top word was belief, actually. I found that very interesting. Even
Oh,
in a
yeah.
non, Christian job, that
You know what
belief was,
mine was? Communication. Yeah. Yeah.
yep, that sounds about right.
So,
See?
yeah, I know which one you're talking about. That was one of mine. I'm like, okay, that was my degree in college, and look what
See?
I'm doing now,
Right?
communicating. So,
But yeah,
but
so that
yeah,
it definitely, I mean, you have to combat that the best you can. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm literally just gonna like binge watch some random old movie or,
yeah,
just, take a shower or, if I can get myself motivated enough, go for a walk, do like just have my husband take us just for a drive or, just go pet the dogs or it's just,
right.
you find your like coping skills that are good and healthy as best you can.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I mean, I've learned some little tricks of things you can do. It's really interesting if you hum or sing, or I'm trying to think of all of them. It stimulates your vagus nerve, and it's so weird. It's calming. It's the weirdest thing.
Well, that's cool. That's
So, or
awesome.
laughter. Laughter is,
Laughter.
I mean, it makes total sense. But so
Yeah.
sometimes we'll just like kind of just hum it, hum or do something just to kind of,
Mm-hmm.
do it's been interesting.
Get yourself out of your mind,
Yeah,
basically. The
right.
spin. The
The
spin.
spin, the
Yes.
spiral. I found one funny meme that said, "What is there ever a time I can spiral into control, not out of control?"
I love that.
And I was like, "Whoa, I wish
I mean, yeah, exactly.
that
Oh
would be
my gosh.
great."
Yes, it would. Okay. So, you've been on a hard journey with your emotions and your mental health and just some of the judgment and then realizing it's all connected to the loneliness. And so how is God using that? What is his calling on your life now? What are you embracing?
So I'm embracing my dream of being a writer.
Mhm.
And part of that is also putting myself out there to share my story and in different ways in writing and then speaking. The speaking
Mhm.
is wonderful because I get to actually like get the feedback from people of, what spoke to them in my message. Or
Mhm.
I mean in the writing too. It's great. I've had people come up to me and they're like, "Wow, like that totally, thank you for sharing and thank you for
Yeah.
being open about it." And for me, it's getting the message out there that it's okay to not be okay,
Mhm.
and it's okay to not be okay as a Christian. I feel
Mhm.
like I did not realize until I was working on my second book that that was really going to be my merge of a passion.
Mhm.
I knew I liked to write. I knew I, had been doing Bible studies and things like that. So I was learning about stories of the Bible and how to connect them. Connect, see?
Huh?
I mean,
Connect?
my connection. Uh, how we can use it in our real life, how we can, look at the people in the Bible and find similarities.
Who did you identify with in the Bible
Elijah,
and why?
because he cried out to God and said, "I don't want to do this anymore."
Mm.
And God, I do joke about that actually, that I'm like, maybe I need to take a nap and get some food. Because that's what God provided. So he's like, go take a nap and get some food. Like,
Yeah.
hungry. I don't know.
Hey, you
But
never know. It could
I
help.
mean, sometimes it does help. I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
does. Sometimes like that's a coping skill.
Yep.
It's literally
Exactly.
you're
You got to do
just tired.
that self-care.
Self-care. But for me, just because he had that moment doesn't mean God stopped using them. That means
Right.
he just shifted his role. And
Right.
I feel that too because I was so involved in my church and I had to step away from that to embrace the writing.
Mhm.
And that comes with different struggles. And it's
I have a question. How did you know that God wanted you to write a book about your experiences? What did you feel or hear or experience that you knew that was it?
um so I in looking back after I started writing, I found in my journal that I actually wrote as a teenager that I wanted to publish a book. I kind of always had felt it and I had tried a few
Uh-huh.
times. I remember saying that to someone and they're like, "What? What do you mean you tried a few times?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I didn't you don't tell them when you have nothing."
Right. Yep.
Story just wasn't coming together,
Yeah. You
but
didn't have the story yet.
I didn't have the right story. I
Yeah.
kind of funny because they are kind of kept what I had started and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could actually like it actually
Huh?
is on the same kind of path. It just didn't quite come together."
Interesting.
But I really felt the push, the real just like it's time
Mhm.
when we were recording videos during COVID. I was involved the recording, and we decided that we were going to have an elder meditation, which basically meant just a short little devotional that we would share during our church service. And so they're like, well, while you're here, can you do that too? Sure. I had 15 rolls. Sure.
Yeah. No wonder why you burned out.
Like exaggerating just a little, maybe 13. No, feels like a lot.
I know.
But I would write it out because I'm still working on the public speaking side, but I'd write it.
Great, by the way.
Well, thank you. I'm getting a little, but there was one that I wrote that I kept saying, God knows. God knew like that we were going to do this. God knew this. He knew this. He knew this. And so during that particular video, my pastor had done the sermon. We had a few songs. I did my meditation, and he got up at the end and was going to do announcements. And what he said, and I can't quite quote him, but he's like, I didn't have to give a sermon. We could have just had your elder meditation and had the music. I didn't have to preach today. Like saying to me that like that spoke to him. And to me,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. So then I'm like, okay, I had started writing, but then I had stopped. And I was like, okay, I need to actually just get this going. So a few days later, I messaged him and said, I have this like thing. Can you read it? Horrible draft 1 plan. But it was just like, he's just like, wow, you really like, not that I made any sense in it, but it just was so jagged and just not connected.
It was just your thoughts flowing, right?
It was. Yeah. But the encouragement that came out of it of like, you might have something here. Like and I had
That's
people
amazing.
tell me that, hey, you're writing these little elder meditations. You need to write more, So I was hearing people, but it was really that little God knows, which I'm like, knows.
He does know. He does know. I have stories of where he was preparing me for things in the future. And then after that thing happened, just like your dream, he showed you he's done things like epiphanies, and it's super powerful. He does know, that's for sure.
No, it definitely, and it's very healing in especially when I wrote more about my mental health. It was very healing to get it out. And like I was saying, the guilt and shame, like people know my story now. Like you could judge it, but now you've heard it from me.
Right.
Things that how it happened or what I was feeling a little more and what the therapy was about and just various things that like I know that was hard for me to describe, and I was able to put at least a fair amount of it into words for people to understand it a little better, even though I know they'll never,
amazing.
They may not ever fully understand it because they've not gone through it, but they can sympathize at least.
Right.
And feel like, okay, I understand.
Do you feel like God gave you the words? Because so often you weren't able to verbalize it.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. The chapter that I wrote about my suicidal ideation, I literally didn't know I was going to write about it. It was so weird that I was like, I was writing about Elijah. I tied in Elijah and Job. And I was just like, as I was typing it, I was like, I'm going there. Oh my, this is like, as I was typing it going, okay, what?
Where are we going, God?
We're going there.
We're going. Okay.
All right.
We're taking a detour and going this way. Okay.
Dark road coming up. Yep.
Wow.
But that was really, an interesting experience. And
I bet.
So my pastor will read my chapters, and I forewarned him, like, okay, I'm gonna forewarn you. Hold on, like, don't read this when you're in like a happy mood, or, like,
right.
Don't rush through this. This is a tough one. And I remember he like texted or like told me, he's like, whoa, I was not expecting that. I was like, I know.
I tried to warn you.
I did warn you a little bit. But I was like, hold on, because yeah. But
That's really amazing that God gave you the words for your book so that you can even reach more people. And if there's somebody out here that really needs to hear and read those words that God gave you, where can they find your book? I know it's Ask Publishing, but is that the name of
is
where the URL?
no, so that is actually my publisher name. It's kind of
Okay.
I came up with that because you have to when you self-publish.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I came up with that is I asked God for it.
I think it makes perfect sense.
It was a
He
good
gave
word.
me
I was like,
chase. He gave me chase and
there
embrace.
you
It
go.
just like fell in my
Right.
lap. I'm like, okay, we're going for it.
So I do have a website. It's called
Okay.
extraordinarymordinary.com.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I feel like there's so many extraordinary moments that come in ordinary times,
Yeah,
moments.
I 100% agree with that.
I came up with that years ago and I was like, yeah, that's actually okay. Kind of
That's
came together.
amazing.
But I have my books on Amazon. I have them at Barnes and Noble. Like pretty much just Google my name, and it's kind of fun actually at this point to Google my name because all my books, like
Huh? What are their
different.
titles?
So the
Yeah.
so the first one is Pieces of Faith,
Mhm.
discovering my life. Hold on,
Hey, show it. Show it.
discovering God in my life puzzle.
Oh, I love that.
And then sorry, I just totally couldn't remember my full title. And then the second one is building faith, strengthening your love for God, others, and yourself. So
That's
definitely
awesome.
had tests in having to be learn those lessons that I write about again. That's
Mm-hmm.
the other part of embracing my writing journey is that you will be tested in what you are going to
Mm.
be writing about. I wrote my first book about peace and yeah, the anxiety went up. And
Mm-hmm.
then the love was definitely learning how to show love better, but also receive it. So
Isn't it
lots of,
harder to receive?
oh yeah. And just for me, when I say love yourself, I know it can sound like selfish or conceited, but like we were saying, like the self care, taking care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself, doing the
Yeah.
things that are good for you, figuring out
Right.
what is best for you, speaking up
And
for
it's
yourself.
hard to share love to others when you don't even love yourself.
Mhm.
I mean, I know that's a common cliche kind of thing to say, but it's so true.
Definitely. And for me,
You
it was
know,
like showing that's how you show God love is showing is you're respecting
exactly.
yourself. That's
Yeah.
that
I
it
mean,
all ties.
God created us, when we don't like ourselves, and I went through that a lot in my life where I just wished I was someone totally different. I wish I was taller. I wish I had different hair color. I wish this, I wish that. And how disappointing in our creator would be, you don't even like the way I designed you, but it's
Right. Well, that's
finding
that
that
song.
purpose.
That's that song that says about finding, he loves me the way
Yeah,
I am.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the song that
That's
we
that
can't
song.
remember.
But I don't remember who it's by.
Yeah. Is it Melissa Woods? Is it
Maybe.
Melissa? I don't know. I'll
I don't
put
know.
it in, like I said, I'll put it in the comments. I don't
I
remember
literally
either, but
just
it's,
I went to YouTube after I heard the song and I just wrote the truth and it came up and I went, great. That's the one. Yeah.
yeah, and it is the same song. We're talking about the same song, and I think it's Melissa Woods, but I'm not 100%. But
Well,
like I said, I'll post it in the comments. So if people want to know the song that we both
that
don't remember,
we can't. I
but
told
we
you, you've got
both
to remember it.
identify with it.
Yeah. It's the point of
I love
remembering.
it.
See, this feels like
Yeah,
the thing today.
yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing about the dream because I've had those dreams too, or those epiphanies where it's like, and they're so powerful and yet warm, I don't know. It's hard when you get that because then you realize that, wow, God knew before that this was going to happen and he was trying to prepare me. And yet, so he was with you that whole time. And it's a very powerful thing. I just can't even describe that feeling when I realized that he had walked through a really hard time in my life, and the steps that happened that he took me through 3 years before was preparing me for that time. And I just immediately started crying. And interestingly enough, I was interviewing somebody. I used to work at an organization for homeless people. And one of my jobs was interviewing homeless people who are trying to get through their addiction and get on to a better place in their life. And so I was like sitting there, and he gave me this big epiphany, and I just started bawling in front of this guy. It's like, I'm so sorry. God just gave me a big epiphany was all I could say. And,
That's that's
yeah, it is life. And, you and I have been laughing, but, and I love that. And I hope people, enjoy our conversation. And I hope that people find hope in your story, because you are able to laugh now, even in some parts of it. It doesn't mean that you don't have hard days.
right.
There are
Exactly.
hard days, but yet you find those moments to laugh, and you just cling on to those, in those hard times.
I did ask I did ask a friend recently. He's like, "Well, are you going to write about your mental health journey?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of already did a lot, but okay." Um it was like, so I asked him, I said, "Well, what else would you want to know?" I was just
Hmm.
someone who hasn't experienced it that has shared with me. And he's like, that the struggle continues. And I went, I like that. That is a
That's book
very
three.
like fair point. I mean,
Yeah.
because yeah, like I was saying, I mean, you can have your low point, but that doesn't mean that all your problems are fixed. That doesn't mean that you're like, as I said, you forget everything that just happened. It's
Hmm.
You're slowly climbing out. You're not like just hopping out of that valley.
I like that. That's your third book. Okay, when are you writing it?
It's a
So
muddled mess right now. How about that?
yeah. Okay. Well, we like that. That's always a good start.
That's a teaser.
Yeah.
Muddled mess.
Yeah.
It's got to
Modeled
start somewhere.
mess. Yeah, exactly. Well, I already had told you we had spoken about your books, and I'm definitely going to have you on my author series that's going to be in spring, and where we're going to do a deep dive into certain aspects of your book and the hard details. And I'm super excited to invite you back to the show and that we can talk. I can't wait, honestly, to read your book. I don't know, should I read one or both? You tell me. What do you think? Which one
Man.
do you want to cover?
I
The
mean, I
first
gave more
one?
of a teaser for the second one, but
Yeah. Well, we can do the second one. We'll do
I'm
the
like,
second one.
the second one is really more, I mean, it's funny because, I'm so proud of both of them, but it's
Mhm.
so funny because I'm like, I'm pushing the second one, but people want the first one. And I'm like, that's okay. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they want to read it. And that I can't deter that.
No.
But I feel like the second one is much more deep, much more authentic, like
Okay.
kind of got more into a rhythm. Your first one, you're just
Right.
like, no idea what you're
What am
doing.
I doing?
I mean, not that I know what I'm doing yet.
Hey, that works. Yeah. Well, I'm super excited about the author series. So we'll definitely have you back. And anybody, if you want to get her book, she is on Amazon. We'll link them down below in the comments as well. But come back and you'll see her this summer and talking about their second book. And we'll do a deep dive. And who knows? Maybe she'll have her third one started. Well, Rebecca, I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I really appreciate you opening up. And I know that God is going to get this out to people who need to hear your story and have the same struggles. And, I even can identify with you in some of those places. And so I get it. And I really appreciate you just being an open book and sharing God's journey and chasing God and embracing what he has with your books and sharing your story. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate being any opportunity to speak about it and hopefully, as you said, get the word out to the people that need to hear it. Not just
Yeah,
want to
that's
hear it, but need to hear it.
Yeah. And the thing is, everyone has a story. Everyone has a hard story, not an easy story. Life is hard. And the thing is God is using your story to help others. And you did the God thing. You wrote 2 books, the thing that he wanted you to do. And so that's one thing. If you have something heavy on your heart that you feel God is calling you to do it, because you do not know who it's going to help.
But God
So
knows. See?
God knows. Yep. God knows. Thank you so much.